Hi, I'm Edith Harbaugh. I'm CEO and co-founder of LaunchDarkly. We help software development teams launch, measure, and control their features. And what does that mean? There's a problem that everybody realizes that the big monolithic releases are dying or extinct or should be dead. The old days where you could do a release every 3 years, wait for somebody to adopt it, and get feedback a year after that is inefficient, costly, and kills the cycle between you and customer feedback. So the whole push of continuous delivery has been to shorten from 3 years to once a year to once a quarter to now the fastest companies are releasing several times a day, if not several times an hour. However, there's still a lot of issues with this. When you're releasing multiple times an hour, how do you keep all your different product teams in sync? How do you keep customers from seeing risky code? How do you keep people from, the dark fear of all continuous delivery is that you're just dumping buggy code out into production and letting people sort through it. So the better way is to use feature flags. Feature flags were first popularized by Netflix, Flickr, Etsy, even back about 7 years ago in 2009. So feature flags are really starting to come into their prime, where people see that if they use a feature flag, and a feature flag is just basically a way to wrap a piece of code with a flag and then turn it on for different people. This seems incredibly simple, but what that really means is that you could push code as often as you want, when you want, and separate out deployment from rollout. So the original idea of LaunchDarkly was feature flags as a service. I talked to a customer the other day, and they compared their feature flag system to a junk drawer. It was a junk drawer because it was basically a config file that they'd hacked together, and they were toggling everything on and off by having some engineer go and look at a database. Pretty inefficient. So the first iteration of LaunchDarkly was basically to take this junk drawer, give you a beautiful UI where you could control all your feature flags. So that was 1.0 LaunchDarkly. What we found then is after we started getting customers is that our customers were a lot bigger than we initially anticipated. And they weren't really interested in us so much for feature flags, though they liked that a lot. What they were really interested in us was then all the management around a feature flag. And let me explain what that means. Once you've taken it for granted that you could turn a feature on and off separate from deployment, once you've taken it for granted that feature flags are visible to everybody in your organization, are decoupled from release, once you've bought into this is a really good time and you're having not just 2 or 3 feature flags, but maybe a dozen or 100 feature flags, suddenly a feature flag is a first-class object where you want a lot of functionality to control it. You want to have different feature flags across different environments. You want to have a feature flag that is in your development environment, in your staging environment, in your production, and you want to have visibility into its state in each of those environments. You also then want to have lifecycle management of a feature flag. One of the biggest slams about feature flags is that they're technical debt, that you end up with a lot of if-thens cluttering your code. So you actually then want to have management where for every feature flag you could see how often is it used, who's using it, when was the last time it was called, can I take this out? And then you get into the whole hairy area of SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. If these feature flags are actually controlling permissioning, you actually want to be able to see who turned it on, when, and why. It's not enough just to have an engineer maybe take a note somewhere. If you're doing this in a real production environment, you want to have an audit log to see who did it, and beyond that, you also want to tighten down controls. You want to have different roles of who can see a feature flag, and then you even want to have custom roles, where you can see that where you can set roles like my QA can only touch stuff in QA, or this person has full rights over a dev environment but very limited rights over QA. So that's basically what we've been building is feature flags lifecycle management, beyond just creating a feature flag to what happens when you've really bought into feature flags and you want to control a whole bunch of them. So this is the LaunchDarkly dashboard, and this shows off some of the feature flag lifecycle management tools we've built. You can see on the far right that we give you a status of your feature flag. Again, this is to combat technical debt. If something is gray in the little circle on the right, that means that it hasn't been touched in a long time. That means that you should probably pull it down. We also let you know how often it's been touched. You can see how regularly a feature flag has been touched, and that again is a status of where it is in life cycle of development. We also then, we're really trying to give people visibility about the state of this feature flag. One of the biggest mistakes we hear about people who are using feature flags is that they forget they have it, or they forget that it's on. So I heard a horror story about a huge company I won't name, where somebody just went in and turned all the feature flags because they didn't really understand their state. So what we're really doing is up-leveling visibility of all feature flags and making it extremely obvious what's happening in your system. So this is a really cool feature that we just added, which is, again, for Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. It's for bigger clients to see exactly who's touched a feature flag when, at an extremely granular layer. You can see exactly who touched a feature flag, what changes they made, and then export it to any sort of file you want. So this is true auditing for true control of a system. Beyond that, it's just kind of cool to look at. So we give people both a dump file, which I showed before, which you can export to whatever system of record you want, as well as a quick look, so you can see this. And it's funny, I showed this to a customer yesterday, and they're like, well, we could now fire people because we know that they changed something. And I'm like, well, you don't have to fire them, but at least go tell them not to do it again. Because right now, people who use feature flags without these type of functionality, they have these endless chains of who changed that, why did somebody change this, when did somebody change this. With an audit log, you really end that completely. Who changed it? Okay, go talk to them. Why did they change it? Maybe there's something else you don't know about that's a good reason. Maybe you could tell them not to do it. So the thing that makes me happiest right now is that I think feature flags are becoming more and more pervasive and prevalent in development practices, and that there's a real hunger for people who want to use them, but want to use them at scale. And that's really the value that LaunchDarkly provides. It's not just feature flagging, but feature flagging management. So I'm happy to take any questions about LaunchDarkly and feature flagging and feature flag management. That's a really good question. So the question was, are there common feature flags? We've actually seen the most growth from companies that have already built their own infrastructure and are really tired of maintaining it. So they're not really, I'd say, brand new to feature flagging. It's just they have gotten to the point where they're like, we need a replacement. And so each of those different companies really has their own idiosyncratic way that they do feature flags, and we don't really dictate this is how and when you do it. It's more they know that they're doing it, and they want to focus on their core product instead of building an infrastructure to manage feature flags. So the question was, how granular can we get about tracking a feature flag? We could get extremely granular. We pipe that data into different analytic systems. That's also something that people really like is instead of guessing about how a feature is used, you could get real data. Thank you.